She sat in the wrong seat on the plane and ended up next to a CEO, looking for his future partner. Row 14, seat C. Emily Dawson was supposed to be in 17A, but the overhead bins were full by the time she boarded, and the gate agent had just closed the jet bridge door behind her. Sweaty from sprinting across Terminal C and flustered from a delayed connection out of Denver, she slipped into the first aisle seat she could find, whispering an apology to the man already seated beside her. He didn't answer. Not with words, anyway. He turned, offered a polite half-smile, and angled his body slightly to give her space. Dark charcoal suit. Crisp collar, open at the throat. A leather notebook sat closed in his lap, a boarding pass tucked neatly beneath the elastic strap. She caught a glimpse of the name on it. Grant Callahan. She didn't know that name yet. Outside the small, oval window, the rain smudged the lights of the tarmac into soft amber streaks. Inside, the cabin settled into that hush before takeoff. Phone switching to airplane mode, seat belts clicking. Emily exhaled for the first time in an hour. Then, from the corner of her eye, movement. Grant had turned, just slightly. He was watching her. Not staring. Just observing. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away, either. A second passed. Maybe two. The plane jolted forward. And with it, something else began to move, quietly, imperceptibly, toward a future neither of them could have predicted. Sometimes, the wrong seat takes you exactly where you were meant to go. Before we dive into this story, make sure to like the video and hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. The plane lifted off with a soft roar, the nose tipping into a misty July sky over Dallas. Emily pressed her hands together in her lap, knuckles wide around her phone. Somewhere back in row 17, her actual seat sat empty, but her carry-on had found a home 2 rows above her head. She figured she'd deal with the flight attendant if it came to that. But it didn't. Not right away. Instead, the man beside her, Grant, opened the leather-bound notebook in his lap and began flipping through pages filled with sharp, confident handwriting. Financial projections, meeting notes, a name written at the top of the page, Callahan Strategies. She didn't have to Google it. She'd heard of it before. Her brother had once referred to them as the suits who turn rust into gold. Corporate turnarounds. Ruthless buyouts. He didn't look ruthless. Not entirely. She peeked again. Strong jaw, but not clenched. Eyes scanning each page with quiet precision. Hands still. He hadn't once glanced at his phone. Or spoken. And yet, "You're in the wrong seat," he said, voice low, unbothered. Emily froze. Caught. "Yeah, I know. There was no space back there. I was going to move once we leveled out." He nodded, almost imperceptibly. "It's fine." But his voice held something else. Not coldness. Not sarcasm. Just certainty. Like a man who noticed everything and chose what to acknowledge. Emily turned back toward the window, cheeks warm. The seatbelt sign dinged off, and like clockwork, a flight attendant passed by. Perky smile, glossy hair, clipboard in hand. "I think someone's in the wrong seat," she chirped. Grant lifted his eyes, slowly, meeting hers before she could look at Emily. "She's with me." That paused the attendant, just long enough for her smile to flicker. "Of course. Let me know if you need anything." Emily blinked. "She's with me." It wasn't a flirt. It wasn't even warm. But it was protective. An effortless deflection. He turned a page in his notebook. "You didn't have to do that," Emily said, voice barely above a whisper. Grant didn't look at her, but his voice softened. "You look tired. Didn't want you moving mid-flight." She hesitated. "Thanks." Still facing forward, he asked, "Work trip?" She hesitated again. "Interview." That finally earned his full attention. He turned, one brow raised, not mockingly, but with genuine interest. "What field?" She shifted in her seat. "Marketing. I've been freelancing for a couple of years after a layoff. This would be the first full-time role I've considered since." He nodded once. "Tough market." Emily's jaw tensed slightly. Especially when you're pushing 30 and your resume's full of contract gigs. HR reads independent, and here's unreliable. Something flickered behind his eyes, Recognition, maybe. Not pity. You'll crush it, he said matter of fact. She gave a dry laugh. You don't even know me. I know what confidence looks like when someone's faking it, he said, tapping a pen against his notebook. Yours isn't fake. That silenced her. Not because it was bold, but because it was precise, surgical, and bodily kind. A moment passed, then another. The hum of the engines filled the quiet. Finally, she asked, what about you? Work trip. He hesitated this time. Closed the notebook gently. Board meeting. Nashville. We just acquired a manufacturing firm, family-run, 50 years old, nearly bankrupt. My team's flying in to decide if we save it or strip it for parts. She glanced at him. And which way are you leaning? He met her gaze. Unflinching. I haven't decided. The way he said it, measured, restrained, made it clear he had. But maybe he wasn't proud of the answer yet. Something shifted between them then. Not warmth. Not attraction. Something quieter. A mutual understanding of heavy choices. The kind that weigh on your sleep. The kind that no one ever really trains you to make. Emily leaned back in her seat, her body finally relaxing for the first time since the morning. Then, footsteps. A tall, silver-haired man appeared in the aisle, flanked by a younger assistant with a clipboard. His eyes scanned the row. There you are, he said sharply. Grant, you're not in first. Grant sat straighter, decided to stay back. The man narrowed his eyes, then turned to Emily. And this is... Emily opened her mouth, but Grant answered first. A candidate. For a strategy role. The silver-haired man blinked, caught off guard. Grant stood, extending a hand toward Emily. Emily Dawson. She's got fresh eyes and 10 years of frontline experience with brand recoveries. I invited her to sit in. Emily didn't know what surprised her more, that he remembered her last name, or that he just pitched her like a hidden ace. The older man gave her a cursory nod. Well, let's hope you're not wasting your time then. He walked off before she could reply. Grant sat again, exhaling slowly. What was that? She asked, bewildered. George Langston. Partner. Likes to swing his weight. And you just... What? Pretended to recruit me. Grant looked at her, his expression unreadable. No, he said simply. I meant what I said. Emily stared at him, unsure whether to feel flattered or cornered. But beneath the chaos of the moment, something steadier began to root. Not a romance. Not yet. But respect. A kind that doesn't come from compliments or charm, but from watching someone see you and step in when it counts. They sat in silence for a while after that. The clouds outside thinned. The cabin lights dimmed. And as the plane arced eastward into golden light, Emily found herself thinking not about the interview or even the job, but about him, this stranger who offered no promises, no smiles, but somehow made her feel safer than she had in months. She turned toward him just as he looked her way. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Something was taking shape between them. It just hadn't decided what it wanted to become. The plane touched down just after 7 p.m., wheels kissing the Nashville runway with a soft thump. Emily followed the others down the jet bridge, still unsure if what had happened 30,000 feet in the air was real, or just one of those strange, time-suspended moments that vanish once your feet hit the ground. But Grant didn't vanish. He waited, at the edge of the terminal, near a quiet seating area by a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows. He paused and gestured toward a bench. 5 minutes. Emily nodded, cautious but curious. He sat beside her, loosening his tie for the first time since they met. Langston's going to fight this acquisition. Wants to sell off the patents. Liquidate the factory, lay off about 200 employees. But I've seen enough to know it's still viable. You said it was nearly bankrupt. He nodded. That's what the books say. But numbers can't read people. Emily tilted her head. So why tell me? Grant looked at her then, full on. Because in 45 minutes, I'm walking into a room where they expect me to kill a company I think can survive. I could use someone who knows how to tell a story, and someone who isn't afraid to speak the truth. She blinked. Are you serious? He pulled out a business card. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from here. I'll buy you 30 minutes of caffeine and context, if you're willing. Emily stared at the card. Her heartbeat picked up, and for the first time in a while. It wasn't from anxiety. She followed him. The coffee shop was half-lit and nearly empty, save for a barista who looked like he'd been counting the minutes until closing. Grant took his Americano black. Emily ordered tea, voice steadier now. In 15 minutes, he laid it out: charts, projections, leadership struggles, employee testimonials. And Emily listened. Really listened. Then she spoke. "You're missing something," she said quietly. He looked at her, surprised. Not offended, intrigued. She flipped the folder toward her, pulled a pen from his bag, and began circling 3 lines of employee feedback. These 3, all mid-level floor managers, used the same phrase. They stopped asking what we thought. "That's your story." Grant leaned forward. "Go on. Don't lead with numbers. Lead with people. You walk into that boardroom and remind them that the second this company stopped listening, it started dying. Make the case that reviving it means restoring trust, not just cutting fat. Because if you can prove there's still heart on that floor, those 200 jobs aren't a cost. They're an investment." For the first time, Grant didn't respond right away. He just looked at her. And in the quiet between them, something passed: gratitude, respect, a kind of awe that needed no words. "You're good," he finally said. She shrugged. "I've had to be. No safety net." His expression softened. "You ever think you were meant to be on that plane?" Emily smiled. "I think I was meant to be late enough to miss my actual seat." They both laughed then, quiet, breathy. The kind of laughter that fills the cracks of everything that came before. Grant glanced at the time. "We should go." As they stood, she handed him the marked-up folder. Their fingers brushed. He didn't pull away right away. Neither did she. A small pause. Then, his voice, softer. "You calm me down. Back there." She looked up. "You covered for me." "I noticed your hands," he said. They were shaking. "You noticed everything." A silence. Not awkward, intimate. "I'm glad you sat next to me," he said. Emily swallowed. Her voice barely carried the words. "So am I." He stepped back, just enough to let the moment breathe. Then, gently, he reached for her hand. Not to shake it, not to claim it. Just to hold it for one honest second. It said more than any speech could. They walked out together. In the sleek glass building 3 blocks away, the boardroom was polished and cold. 6 men and 2 women sat in a half-circle, waiting. Grant opened the presentation with numbers, as expected. But 5 minutes in, he turned. "Before we continue, I'd like to share a voice that hasn't been in this room before." He nodded toward the side door. And Emily stepped in. The room shifted. Langston frowned. "Who is this?" Emily didn't flinch. "Someone who read your case files and saw a heartbeat instead of a balance sheet." Gasps. Chuckles. One raised brow. But Grant smiled. And for the next 10 minutes, she told the story of a company that still had something left to fight for, not with buzzwords, not with theatrics, but with simple, human truth. By the end, the room was still. Langston leaned back, saying nothing. But the woman beside him, the CFO, spoke first. "I want to hear more." And in that moment, Emily saw it. The shift. Not just in the room. In herself. She belonged here. As the meeting broke, Grant brushed past her on the way out. His hand found hers, just briefly. No promises. Just presence. Just enough. The hallway outside the boardroom was lined with glass. Floor-to-ceiling windows catching the deep gold of the setting sun. Emily stood just beyond the double doors, shoulders back, breath shallow. Her fingers still tingled from the adrenaline. From the moment Grant had handed her the room, without hesitation. No warning. No script. Just trust. She'd done what she always did. Found the human truth buried under cold data. But this time, it mattered more. Because this time, people were listening. She turned when she heard the door open behind her. Langston stepped out. His silver hair caught the light, but his usual commanding posture was softened. The man who'd dismissed her on the plane now looked at her like she'd rewritten something he thought he'd already understood. He didn't speak right away. Then, that was unexpected. Emily didn't flinch. "Good." Langston nodded slowly, studying her. "You know, when Grant said you were a candidate, I thought it was a stunt. She met his eyes. So did I. He gave the faintest smile. Well, you have better instincts than half the room. A pause. I'd listen to you again. That was it. No handshake. No big declaration. Just a line, dropped like a stone into water, and it rippled. He walked away, leaving her there, the words still hanging in the air. Then Grant appeared, blazer unbuttoned, expression unreadable but lit from within. He stopped just beside her, his eyes on the light falling across the windows. You were remarkable, he said quietly. She gave a small smile. You weren't so bad yourself. They stood there in silence, the noise of the city muffled behind glass. Outside, the sun was slipping behind the Nashville skyline, casting long shadows and soft edges. Grant glanced over, studying her face like he was still trying to understand something that had already changed. I've spent 10 years walking into rooms like that, he said. Polished floors, calculated nods, people who say things just to fill space. I've never seen someone hold a room like that, by simply telling the truth. Emily shrugged gently. Truth's easy when you're not trying to impress anyone. He let out a short breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Maybe that's why it worked. She looked up at him. You knew they wouldn't listen to you unless someone else opened the door first. I hoped, he admitted, but I wasn't sure. And if I failed, he met her gaze fully now, voice low. I would have backed you anyway. There was no performance in his face. No suave, practiced charm. Just a man who meant what he said. Emily swallowed the emotion rising in her chest. I didn't think I'd ever want this again, she murmured. The meetings. The pressure. The constant proving of yourself. Grant's voice was softer now. You don't have to prove anything to me. She didn't look away. You didn't ask for my resume. Or my credentials. You just handed me the floor. I saw something in you, he said, barely above a whisper. Emily blinked. What if you were wrong? I wasn't. He reached for her hand, not boldly, not possessively, just a simple touch. A quiet acknowledgement of everything they had carried through together, without ever naming it aloud. She let him. A warmth passed between them. Not heat, not fire, just a steady, grounding hum. The kind that said, I see you, I trust you, and I'm still here. A beat passed. Then another. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. Instead, Grant nodded toward the exit. There's a small bar down the street. Quiet. Good lighting. Even better hush puppies. Emily grinned. Are you offering me a drink? Or a debrief? Maybe both. She paused, holding his gaze. Then, you're paying. Grant smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. I wouldn't have it any other way. As they walked side by side, their arms brushed lightly. Neither of them pulled away. The rhythm between them had changed. Not rushed, not defined, but deeply understood. They moved forward, not into a perfect ending, but into something real, something earned, something still unfolding. And somewhere deep in Emily's chest, something quiet and steady whispered, this is what trust feels like. 6 weeks later, the factory floor in Franklin, Tennessee, hummed with a different kind of noise. Not just machines, but music from a portable speaker in the corner. Laughter near the break room. Conversations that didn't pause when a manager walked by. And standing at the center of it all, in worn boots and a denim button-down, Emily Dawson smiled as a forklift reversed behind her, beeping cheerfully. The turnaround plan had been approved. Not because it promised quick profits, but because it promised people. And people, it turned out, had a way of showing up when someone finally asked them to. Grant had insisted she join the advisory team, officially. The title was modest. The salary fair. But the influence, that was real. She'd fought for the mentorship program they'd written off as too idealistic. Pitched community outreach as a strategic investment, not just good PR. Even helped the former shift supervisor draft his first ever team newsletter, typed out on her laptop during a thunderstorm with the power flickering overhead. What surprised her most wasn't that they listened. It was that they started asking her what came next. A week ago, the woman who'd once dismissed Emily as a last-minute guest at that boardroom table asked if she'd consider overseeing the company's long-term branding strategy. We need your instinct, she'd said. You lead people without trying to. Emily had blinked, nodded, and said she'd think about it. But deep down, she already knew. This was hers now. Not the title. Not the corner office she'd never wanted. The impact. The voice. The belonging. And then there was Grant. He didn't hover. Didn't show up with flowers or late-night texts or declarations. That wasn't him. But he called every Friday. Showed up for her first town hall speech without warning, leaning quietly against the back wall, arms crossed. Watching her like she was saying something he already believed. And today? Today he was here again. She spotted him near the old shipping dock. In rolled-up sleeves and boots that still looked too new. He was speaking with the floor manager, but when he saw her, his posture shifted. Straighter. More present. Emily walked over slowly, the sun catching her face through the skylight. "You survived another tour," she said. He grinned. "They offered me a coffee. Said I wasn't just a suit anymore." She smirked. "You still button your shirt too high. Progress takes time." They stood there, just at the edge of the floor where noise gave way to quiet. "So," he said gently, "the board's ready to offer you the position." She glanced away, thinking. "Then, you think I should take it?" Grant didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at her the way he had on that plane, the first time he really saw her. "I think you already have," he said. "They're just catching up." A long pause. Then, softly, "Would it be weird if I said I'm proud of you?" Emily turned back toward him, something flickering behind her eyes. "No," she said, "but it might be weird if you didn't say it again sometime." His smile was small, but warm. "Deal." And then, without hesitation, without fanfare, he reached for her hand. Not as a question, as a continuation. She laced her fingers into his, slowly, gently, as if they'd already been doing this for a while now. They didn't say what this was, didn't define it. They didn't need to. Out on the factory floor, a bell rang signaling the end of shift. Workers began trickling toward the exit, some waving to her, others offering nods and thank yous that didn't need to be said aloud. Grant looked around, then back to her. "You changed this place." Emily shrugged, eyes bright. "We did." He looked down at their joined hands. "Well, you started it." And together, they stood, side by side, at the edge of something neither of them had expected. Not just a new job, not just a new relationship, a new way forward, rooted in truth, built on trust, and still unfolding. Have you ever ended up in the wrong place, only to realize it's exactly where you were meant to be? Emily didn't plan to sit next to a CEO. She didn't expect to be seen, or to speak up, or to change the course of her own life. But sometimes, the wrong seat leads to the right story. And sometimes, the person beside you sees who you are before you do. So, who's been that person for you? If this story made you feel something, share it with someone who's helped you find your voice. Drop a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind you. The best moments often begin with a detour.